Good morning, Galaxians, and welcome to another live edition of the Galaxy CDs, Rocks, and Flips Reseller Talk podcast. If you happen to be new here, hey, my name's Ryan. I'm a full-time reseller, part-time YouTuber, and podcaster working out of my home here in the greater Cincinnati area, and this channel is all about the flip life. Welcome to another of our weekly live kind of reselling chats. If you've got anything in particular you would like to talk about today, let me know in the chat and I'd be happy to go over it. Good morning to everyone. Yes, it is very, very chilly. We'll get in here into the chat. Jennifer, good to see you. Very chilly. What is it up there? It's all the way up to 7 here in southwestern Ohio this morning. Kaylee Debs, good morning. Thanks for coming out. I'm going to increase the size of my screen here because I can't see any of this with my old eyes. Who else? JRKR, welcome. Good morning. Hope everybody is staying warm and safe. I know down south you got some weather you're not accustomed to down there. I had someone in my Whatnot show last night that was talking about all the snow they had in Louisiana. So definitely some interesting times down there. Christy, good morning. Thanks for coming by. Jim Lucas, good to see you again. Your book is on the way, by the way. Mel Flips it. Good morning to you and to everyone else. Kapow Eagle, hello all. Hope everyone is warm. I'm layered up. I've got a base layer and a sweatshirt and a fleece-lined denim shirt, and I'm still a little chilly, but we'll see how it goes. Mel Flips it says, happy birthday, Media Picker. Happy birthday, Brandon, if you're in the house. 5 degrees in southeast Michigan, says Jennifer. So there you go. Little cooler up there. Not that you can tell really the difference between 5 and 6. I was telling my guy at the post office today, bring on summer. I'll take the heat. At least, it might be sweaty and gross, but at least it doesn't hurt my face. Oh, man. Yesterday below zero, said JRKR, 1964. Yeah, when I was doing my Whatnot show last night, I think it was down to like 3 degrees and it was sub-zero with the wind chill. So very, very chilly. Negative numbers this morning in the Lexington area, said Operani on eBay. Mel Flips it's bragging. She's at 18 degrees. Get out of here. Where's Recommerce Dave? He's from Australia, so it's probably very warm down there. Happy birthday, Brandon. Thanks for coming out. Black Cat Flips, good morning. Welcome to the show. Miss Lachey, always a pleasure to see you. Thanks for coming by. Media Picker says, thanks for the birthday wishes. Supposed to get 80 here in California today. Good, good, good. Or is that good, guy? Are you close at all to where all the fires have been? What's your situation out there besides the 80-degree weather, which I'm quite jealous of? Christy says in Phoenix, 31 this morning, which is the equivalent of a foot of snow. For us, I bet that's right. I know I was in Florida. Gosh, it was 2019, I think. I went down in March and it was like, I don't know, mid 60s. And I thought, man, this is fantastic because I'm from Ohio where it was, still in the 30s and 40s. And people are walking around in winter coats complaining about how cold it was. Yikes. Black Cat Flip says 5 degrees in New Jersey. This is supposed to break, I think, here in the next couple of days. I think we're supposed to get into the 30s maybe as early as tomorrow. So Jennifer Raybod says no lines at the post office this morning. So 1+ from the cold temps. Yeah, there was nobody at my branch either. Yikes. Rose says -2 in Connecticut. How close? Have you had any issues? Were you under any kind of evacuation orders? That is just such a disaster out there. My heart goes out. I've got some friends that live out in the LA area that they were traveling and were relying on information from their friends about what the condition of their apartment was. Just a really, really horrific situation. Cameron D, 6 in Western New York. Ugh, yes, that is no bueno. I'm ready for some better weather. Speaking of things we're probably ready for some better of, I've been talking for a while, it seems like, about the situation at eBay and all of the the dalliances with new features and with AI, but with basic site functionality not working. If you have tried to send offers this morning, you're experiencing another of those situations, at least on desktop. It appears to be working on mobile, but on desktop, If you have tried to send an offer, you've probably found, I'll just actually share my screen with you and show you what it's doing. So here I am now. Watch, they'll have fixed it in the 10 minutes since I checked this last. But if you go in and just select a couple of items to try to send offers on, and then click send offers, you'll see up here, nothing comes up. It's all grayed out. Send offers is not currently working on eBay on desktop. I checked it on the mobile app because I send out offers every morning. It is still working currently, at least as of an hour ago on mobile, but it is not working on desktop. So if you're one that sends out a lot of offers and you've not come across that yet, be aware you're going to have to do it on mobile for at least part of the day today. Hopefully they get that fixed, but it just again goes back to my point. And again, I'm just a guy in my basement. What do I know? But eBay has spent an inordinate amount of time, effort, and money over the last couple of years focusing on all these new features and the look of the website and all of this stuff that really none of us have asked for. All we want is for the site to work and for them to attract customers. And neither of those, again, not to be too whatever, are things that are happening at eBay right now. It's a really, really frustrating experience for, I'm sure, all of you as well, to be able to go in and try to do just basic tasks as a seller and to find that you, for whatever reason, at any given moment, may not be able to do those things. It has really gotten to be an issue with eBay. I hope at some point wiser heads will prevail and they put the brakes on all the change and quote unquote improvements and get back to some core functionality really starting to work. So let's get back here into the chat. I think we've got some more weather reports here. Let's see. I can't remember where I left off. Jim Lucas, 7 degrees around Indy. That's chilly as well. Kaylee Debs, we were not evacuated, but had winds of 84 miles an hour, sandwiched between the two major fires. Well, stay safe out there. I know the winds. They were talking, I was watching somebody on YouTube the other day talking about the potential for up to 100-mile-an-hour winds coming through that area this week. So just awful. Kathleen, good morning. Finally able to catch a live. Good morning to everyone. Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. JRKR says the phone is fine for offers if you use the mobile app. Kathleen had trouble with desktop offers first thing this morning. Yeah, it's one of those things you just never know when you sign on to eBay. What's going to work and what's not. Kaylee Debs, offers not working for me either. It appears to be a global issue. My friend Liz over at Value Added Resource posted on Facebook earlier. Apparently, it's going on in the UK as well. So this is international. This is not just a localized. It doesn't appear to be one of those things where some people are having an issue and others are not. This appears to be broadly across the globe that everyone is having a problem. Ms. Lachey says, my sales have fallen off a cliff since January 9th. 7 no sale days in the last 2 weeks. Last January was my best month of the year. I'm still up as of this morning about 24% to last January, which last January ended up being my second or third best month of the year because the end of the year was so strong. But it's historically a very good month for me as well, and I'm ahead of the pace so far. But I'm running some really, really aggressive sales. I've got, as I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, I've got some clearance stuff running at 70% off, and that has certainly goosed my transaction volume. It's not been terrific for my margins, but it's generating some cash flow. It's generating some activity. So if you're not running any sales or promotions, that might be something to at least consider trying. I've heard from a lot of sellers that things have been really tough, and there's a ton of stuff going on with the inauguration, with weather, with the fires. I mean, there's just the world is a bit of a mess right now, and people may be paying attention to some other priorities. But running sales and promotions is one way to at least try to jumpstart some things, even if you only run them for a short period of time, just to give it a try. Kaylee Deb says, stay safe. Mel, sales have definitely gotten slower. And I'm seeing that like across platforms as well. I'm seeing Poshmark sellers make the same comment. Mercari has not rebounded, I don't think, for anybody with the change in the fees. I think that if it ever does come back, it's probably going to take some time. You can let me know in the chat what your Mercari business has looked like, but mine has basically flatlined. I'm not seeing any. I had one big sale a couple of weeks ago that was 6 books for $85, which is my biggest sale on Mercari in quite some time. And since then, I've only done 2 or 3 sales, $30 on one, like $10 or $12 on another. So nothing really happening over on Mercari. JRKR says I'm also way up from the same period last year. So that's good. Congratulations. Mel flips up. Maybe you were saying that your send offers wasn't working. I thought maybe you were in my area instead. Gotcha. No, I think that's probably what that was. She's up in Northwest, your Seattle, Portland area. Am I getting that right? Kapow Eagle, tax time. Ryan, are we still using Wave free, or did you upgrade due to the changes? Curious what programs are the viewers using? Speaking of, that was one of the topics I wanted to get to today. Tax time is not too far off. And there's a couple of things I really wanted to talk about there. So we'll get into that here in a second. I am still using Wave for most of my accounting. It does everything I need it to do. And in conjunction with the 1099s that we already get and everything, I'm able to pretty much do everything I need with that software. So I've been very, very happy with it. But yes, tax time. Media Picker says currently down 7.5% to this time last year. It could be worse. Running a birthday week sale at 22% off the entire store. You can let us know next week how that went. Brandon, good luck with that. And 7.5% is not, given everything that's going on, is probably not terrible. And you're also, if I recall correctly, you're starting to bump up against some pretty good numbers because you had a really good year last year, if my memory serves me correctly. Mel flips it. I found and sold an ex-Librea Octavia Butler Kindred in acceptable condition for $225 in 48 hours. Where's my applause button? That is outstanding. Congratulations. That's an awesome flip. Christy, I will say just in the last week, I've seen Mercari pick up a bit more. I was surprised. Well, good. I'm glad. Hopefully that is the trend. As I've said numerous times, I'd like Mercari to be a viable platform. If it was 10, 12% of my business, with the slightly reduced fees over what I'm paying on eBay, I would be thrilled with that. It just hasn't ever really gotten to that point for me. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Black Cat Flips had a couple of good $100 item sales, and I'm doing better than last January. Good. I've noticed, like, this week in particular, my transaction volume is pretty good, but my average ticket is way down. I've not had any big sales this week. Rise and Grind Picker, hello, welcome to the show. So the tax thing came up, and one of the things that I really wanted to get into with that is it's something I talk about on this show from time to time, and I'm going to go there again. Be very careful about where you get your advice and who you listen to, and the groups that you're in, and the information that you get, and what you take to heart. And this comes up because I, like you, I'm sure, are in a bunch of different, like, Facebook reselling groups, and the topic of 1099s came up, and the amount of, and I don't believe it was malicious, but the amount of incorrect information that people were sharing in the comments about 1099s and taxes in general was absolutely mind-blowing. So I want to do just a little experiment, and don't feel bad if you get it wrong. And if you don't know, you can say in the chat, I don't know. But who can tell me what the 2024 tax year, so last year, the taxes we're about to do, what is the dollar threshold for you to receive a 1099 from any of the payment processors, eBay, Amazon, Venmo, whoever it may be? What is the dollar amount at which they are required by law to send you a 1099? I'll get back here into the chat while we're waiting for that, for you to answer. Let's see. I can't remember where I left off. Couple of $100 sales. Rise and Grind Picker, hello. Ms. Lachey says, I did a sale for 5 days to try to shake it up and got some visibility, got more sales once the sale ended than during. Next time, I'll be more aggressive. And that is something, again, some of those things have knock-on effects. People come in and they see an item on sale, but they don't buy right away. You probably see that same thing with offers, especially now that eBay has extended the amount of time that offers are valid for. People don't respond. They don't act necessarily right away. And then 2, 3, 4 days later, they come back. So just putting those things out there and getting attention on your store can definitely help generate some activity even further down the road. Miss Lachey says, congrats to Mel. Black Cat Flips says it's $5,000. Media Picker says it's $5,000. Jennifer Raybod says it's $5,000. This year anyway, yes, bonus points for anybody who can tell me what it is next year as well. Heading down to 2.5, that is correct as well. Don't know about the 1099. Don't know about 1099, but I know that even if I didn't receive it, it is my responsibility to report income. Absolutely correct. It's surprising how many people don't know that 1099s are also sent to the IRS, which is also true. 5K, this is a pretty informed group. I like it. I have talked about that. If you're a longtime follower of the show, you've heard me talk about this a couple of times this year because they changed it during the course of the year. So the 2,500 that's in place for this year is, of course, subject to change. They've got 12 months. Congress has, on numerous occasions, gone back in and made adjustments to this regulation. But in the Facebook group that I was in, I saw answers about 1099s at 600, 1,250, 2,500, 5,000, 10,000, and some people that still thought it was 20,000. And people who made the comment that if you did not receive a 1099, you didn't have to report that income, which is obviously incorrect also. Now, I always caveat all this. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a tax attorney. If you have questions about your tax situation, you need to speak to a professional. But it goes to show how difficult it can be to get correct information. This is a site people go to, a Facebook reselling group, to get information, to get assistance with something that's really, really important. If you mess up on your taxes, it can get really expensive. And they go in and ask a question about, what do I do about this? And you get half a dozen different answers, most of which are not correct. Mad props again to everybody in the chat who got that right. What would you do as a seller? My response was to post what the right amount was and a link directly to the IRS page that describes exactly what those amounts are. And I do that on this show as well. When I do the normal, Monday news podcast, I don't just tell you what I think is going on. I post links to all my sources so that if you want to double check me, if you don't believe me, or you just want to verify the information that I'm giving you is accurate, you have a resource to do that. And I'm personally to a point in any of these groups, be they reselling oriented or cycling or whatever it is that I happen to be looking for, if there's not a link that references a resource that kind of supports what someone is saying, I generally disregard that information because I don't know that it's going to be accurate. So just, again, be cautious about what it is. The other aspect of that, there was a lot of confusion on, was in particular with eBay. What does eBay show you on your 1099? What is included on your 1099? If you know or have some ideas, you can let me know in the chat what eBay actually shows, or more importantly, maybe does not show on your 1099 when it's available. As of yesterday, they are still not available. They are not available until, well, legally, they're not required to be available until the 31st. eBay historically has been pretty good about getting them out a week or so in advance, so I would expect we'll see them fairly soon. Black Cat Flip says, I just watched Not Your Dad's CPA webinar. Seems like good, knowledgeable info. And again, he's a CPA. So he also, if I'm not mistaken, he does reselling. So he kind of knows what is involved with what we do. And his stuff is really, really good. So that would be a resource that I would absolutely trust. Go in a random Facebook group. That's a pretty dodgy prospect, each other. They tell each other to ignore them. Yeah. And again, like you say, those are sent to the IRS. And an interesting note, I can't remember now if I saw this on eBay's information or if this was, I'm pretty sure this was on the IRS page that I had linked to. Um, Sites who are required to send you a 1099K if you have processed more than $5,000 can, in fact, issue a 1099 all the way down to $600. So if you've earned more than $600, and I know because I just got a 1099 from YouTube, as long as it's over $600, they can report that to the IRS and send you a 1099. Even though they're not legally required to do it down to that amount. So again, it's really important that if you're unsure of what those things are, that you have an accountant or a tax attorney or someone who can help you with those things rather than some random guy in his basement on YouTube or a Facebook group that may have all kinds of incorrect information. And again, not saying anybody's doing it maliciously, trying to get anybody in trouble. There's just I've said this before, probably on my personal Facebook, the number of people who speak with certainty and conviction about things that they clearly do not know anything about is remarkable to me. Mel Flips it says, I don't count on 1099 for my taxes. I count everything. I take deductions. I always have. Yep. And that's why I talk about keeping track of your expenses, what you've bought, supplies, mileage. Again, not a tax professional, not an accountant. Those are just things that I know that you should be talking about. Rise and Grind Picker says just gross sales. Does it include sales tax? Unfortunately, people are hell-bent on getting their information from a random person on YouTube. Right. And that, again, to go back to the IRS example, when I saw all that incorrect information in that Facebook group, I just did a quick Google search for IRS 1099K information and got a link, took me directly to the page, copied the link, went back to Facebook, posted it. The whole process took me less than a minute to have the exact information. I'm continually surprised about the people who ask questions in a Facebook group. Had they just typed that same question into Google, they would have gotten a direct link to the actual source to get the right information. So it's a strange thing. I'm guessing that eBay reports what the buyer pays and does not deduct fees that we pay. That is correct. They do not deduct fees. A couple other things that you may or may not know. They do not account for on your 1099 returns, refunds, allowances, adjustments. If you do a partial refund to a customer for some reason, if you do combined shipping, for instance, on a sale that has been done, that is not reflected in your 1099. Your 1099 is gross payments to you from buyers with no adjustments. The only exception to that are sales tax, which is not included on your 1099, and cancellations. If an item is canceled before it is shipped, that is not included on your 1099. But if you later take a return or do a refund or adjustment, that's not accounted for in your 1099. So you need to keep track of all of that, obviously, so that come tax time, there is, again, not a tax guy, but there is a place on your business tax form to input returns and allowances, which are deductible. That's income you did not earn. You are not required to pay tax on it, but you have to have obviously kept track of that and able to be able to do it. 1099 submission requirements are also dependent on state regulations. That's why there may be different people that receive them. Good point. Right. State regulations, state taxes are almost always very different than federal regulations. Again, another good reason to have an accountant who can help you take care of that stuff. But again, that all notwithstanding, the moral of the story is to just be cognizant of the fact that people in Facebook groups, while maybe well-meaning, are not always necessarily the most well-informed or correct. I don't believe anybody's out there trying to intentionally misdirect someone into making a mistake. But there are people who speak as though they come from some place of expertise that just really aren't completely aware of the regulations. And it's always better to just, if you don't have an accountant, to go to the resource. Go to eBay's 1099 page, go to the IRS 1099 page or Etsy or whomever, and see what it is they report, how they're handling it, what amounts are included and which ones are not, so that you can at least have that information prepared as we get closer to tax time. I believe the initial tax filing date, if I'm not mistaken, is the 27th. So I would expect we'll have our 1099s hopefully before then. Although I'm in no rush, actually, to do my taxes. If I'm being fair, not an expert. No, I am not. I know a couple things. I've owned my own business previously, and I spent some time in accounting classes way back in the day in college. So I know enough to be dangerous. But I'm always one that will obviously caveat that and to say, if I don't know, I don't know, but I will go look. For instance, again, in that Facebook group, I posted the actual link to the IRS page that describes exactly what is the amounts for 1099, so that it's not me saying that, it's here's the link, you can go look for yourself. And I think that's really important. And I think a lot of people don't do that. Media Picker says, as a full-time reseller, you only pay the self-employment and state taxes. Am I missing something? Well, obviously, you still pay federal income tax on whatever your net income is after all your deductions, mileage, and yada, 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 whatever. But you do have to pay the self-employment tax, which problematically, of course, you pay both halves of your kind of FICA and Medicare tax. So when you work for someone else, you pay, I think it's 7.5% for Social Security and Medicare, and your employer pays the other half. The self-employment tax, as a self-employed person, or even if you're part-time, you would be responsible for that. If you've got income, you're still going to be responsible for paying Medicare and Social Security tax on that income. You have to pay that full amount. It might be a little more than that. It's like 15.3% total, something like that. Again, I'm not 100% on that, but I know you have to pay the whole thing. You do also get a small reduction credit for the self-employment tax on your form. So you get a little bit of that back. But yeah, self-employment tax is, for me, most years, it's probably the biggest piece of my tax. After you write off everything else that you can write off, that self-employment tax is a big, big hit. Cameron D says, I'm not. No, most of us aren't. That's why most of us have an accountant or someone who specializes in that sort of thing, or at least TurboTax or something to help, navigate the regulations and the rules. But again, that comes back to what we talked about a few minutes ago, having some sort of process in place, whether it's a notebook, a spreadsheet, accounting software, where you're keeping accurate records throughout the year. The worst case scenario is that you get to, April 10th and taxes are due in 5 days, and you're digging through shoeboxes of receipts trying to figure out what you did and didn't do. So I keep track. I've got a spreadsheet in my phone that I keep track of my miles every day. When I'm going out to a sale, I keep track of every dime I spend on merchandise so that I can account for that. I have records essentially for everything that might come up at tax time. Rise and Grand Picker says, for now, Trump is getting rid of taxes. I'd be all right with that, but that's not what I'm really seeing. I'm not in that millionaire billionaire class that looks like they're going to get the break. So the 15.3 self-employment, federal 0, 12, and so on, depending on net income, and then state taxes and local taxes if your local municipality requires them. In my case, it does. The city of Hamilton, where I live, I have to pay income tax to them based on what's on my federal tax filing as well. But yeah, and again, remembering that if you file, again, talk to your accountant, but if you file Schedule C, which is the business profit and loss, you can deduct all of your business expenses. So all of your supplies, your cost of shipping, there's a cost of goods sold calculation that's involved there. So all of that comes off. There's also a place for mileage and, use of your home for your business. You're allowed to deduct, I think it's up to 300 square feet, something like that. And you get an additional knockoff on your taxes. So there's so much stuff that's available there to reduce your net taxable income. But the 15.3, the self-employment tax, that one, that's based on a slightly higher number. So that one ends up for a lot of folks being the bigger bite. 10%, not zero. Yeah, well, it could end up being zero depending on how much you make, and how much your deductions are. Remember, your taxable income is not necessarily your gross profit, or your net profit rather, from your business, because there are some deductions there, like mileage and that you may not have accounted for in your regular business accounting. So you may end up not owing any income tax on that. Now, if you're employed elsewhere and you've got W-2s and obviously all that, if I'm not mistaken, if you have a business loss, you can write that off against your W-2 income. Again, talk to your tax attorney for that. Thankfully, I've never been in that position, but if you were in that spot, you can really reduce your tax obligations. Media Picker says, I've got my numbers done, did over 25K part-time, but after deductions, only paying on a small fraction of it. Yep. Yeah, by the time you deduct, again, cost of goods sold, your fees to eBay and, mercari and whoever else, your cost of shipping, all of those expenses, the cost of those supplies, if you're paying for storage for your stuff, for your rent, all of that stuff, again, your accountant should advise you with that, but that should all be deductible on your taxes. Kapow Eagle says partnership taxes are due in March. And remember, there are different tax deadlines for different types of things. As a sole proprietor, they're not due until your regular individual filings in April. You're required, I don't know how many people actually do it, but to pay quarterly estimated tax in, I think it's January, April, June, and September, if I remember right, on your potential income for the next tax year, which also catches people out. A lot of people don't do that, or underestimate, or in some cases overestimate what they're going to owe and pay those quarterly taxes. Those are also obligations that are out there. So again, having an accountant handy is super helpful. Ms. Lachey says, last time I heard tax promises, my tax bracket went up 7%. First time I owed after 7 to 8 year stretch. Yep. There were some changes that impacted people in different tax brackets, not necessarily in the best way. For instance, it used to be, mortgage interest deduction was a big write-off for people who owned homes. Now, in a lot of cases, the standard deduction is so big that, in my case, that's a better one to take than what I pay in interest on my mortgage. So, but it has definitely made it more difficult for a lot of people, particularly in the kind of mid-income brackets. I know my tax situation is very different than it was 15 years ago. Man, taxes are depressing, though. I hate paying taxes. Assuming health insurance and amounts you would transfer to your IRA would also be deducted then before you reach your net income. That would be one to talk to your accountant about. I'm like you, I would assume that is correct. You're allowed to deduct up to a certain amount on IRA against your income if it's a standard IRA, not a Roth IRA. So again, there are so many regulations involved there. Best to speak to your accountant. But yes, those things I would think would be deductible. So enough about that. What else is going on? I saw a couple people comment that Mercari had picked up for them a little bit. How about, do we have any Poshmark sellers in the house? How are things going over at Poshmark? I see online a lot of folks talking about things not being particularly great there. Media Picker says it's a question I'll be asking him. IRA is a max of 7K to put in. That number has changed over the years as well. But I think that's right. I think it is 7,000 this year. And you can also put that money in late, up to, I don't know what the actual cutoff date is, but you can still donate to your IRA in this calendar year and write it off against last year's taxes, which is good. Jennifer Raybod says slower on Posh this second half than the first. Yeah. And I wonder how much of that is attributed to the fee changes that they made and then undid, and the uncertainty that that puts into a marketplace, and people who were that paid as buyers that paid those fees and then didn't get anything back when they undid that, that would obviously potentially leave a bad taste in your mouth as a buyer. Would you go back to that site again? I think Mercari is kind of experiencing the same thing. Buyers are not coming back probably as quickly as they would like. Halves of the month. Yeah. Yep. And I've kind of noticed the same thing. The first couple of weeks of January for me, coming right out of the holiday, were much busier than it has been in this last 5 or 10 days, I would say. My whatnot volume notwithstanding, eBay has definitely started to slow down a little bit here in the second part of the month. Mel Flips it said Posh is about the same for me. Mercari is better than last quarter. So there you go. Maybe things are turning a quarter there. Opperini on eBay says, I had a question about listing on eBay. I sold a vintage ink cartridge. I have an identical one to sell. Should I relist or should I sell similar? Chat, what say you on that? I generally do sell similar myself. If I've got a similar item, it's not the exact same item. I'll sell one like this, sell similar, take new pictures, and then work from there. But let us know in the chat what you all think of that. Media Picker says, just trying to prepare for when I go full time down the road. Appreciate the insight. May have some more questions to ask privately. Anytime. Again, I've talked about this before, but feel free. You can reach out to me by DM on Instagram at Galaxy CDs Rocks, or you can email me directly at galaxycds@gmail.com, and I'm happy to answer any questions I can or direct you to an appropriate resource if I can't answer the question. Kaylee Debs, I only have light sales on Poshmark. I don't do promoted closet. There you go. Media Picker sold nothing on Mercari yet this year. Yeah, that's a weird one. I've had maybe 5 sales on Mercari so far in January. So nothing, again, about like it has been for the last 6 months. Not great, but not nothing. It's a weird one. And again, you should be in a category that historically has done well for me, like CDs and DVDs, Blu-rays, 4K Blu-rays. I did really, really well with when I was sourcing a lot of that. Books just does not seem to be a strong category on Mercari. Mel Flips it, says sell similar. Cameron D, little change on Poshmark. Again, no promoted closets. It's a hinky marketing tool. Mel Flips it, sales on Mercari are not media. On Posh, I do better for books. Interesting. I would not have thought of selling books on Poshmark. I've thought about it on Depop, but not ever on Poshmark. That's interesting. Media Picker.
Thanks for the super chat.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate that. Every little bit helps. Miss Lachey says, me either, Brandon. I was doing better with the buyer fees. Interesting. Again, mine, when they made that change originally back in March, I had a bit of a dip initially, and then things kind of recovered. I'm not selling super expensive things typically on Mercari. I think the people that were selling really high ticket stuff are the ones that probably had the hardest time on Mercari because those fees were just enormous for buyers. But then everything kind of stabilized, and it's just been a flat line for me. It's running maybe 6, 7, 8% of my total business, which is not terrific, but it's been at that number probably since June, and it just doesn't show any signs of turning around, unfortunately. Mary McQueen, good to see you. Good morning. Lord Jake Ryan, good morning. Happy birthday to Brandon. 5 sales on Mercari so far this year, so you're right, kind of in line with what my experience has been. And that's, how many listings do you have over on Mercari, Lord Jake Ryan? I'm just curious. I've got well over 9,000. It might be 9,700, and I've still only done 5 sales. That is not a very good hit ratio, but it's free to list, so and it's pretty simple to do with List Perfectly. just hit the button, it pulls everything up. I make a couple of quick edits and boom, it's done. So it's not too painful to do. But man, I wish it was I had a better hit rate over there. Jennifer Raybod says, just listed my first set of books on Posh. Checking it out. Let me know how that goes. I'd be curious. Anyone else who sells things on Poshmark, kind of other than fashion, anything in media, or I know they do electronics, I believe, as well. I've not really looked into that, but if you're finding some success on Poshmark, that may be yet another avenue for me to consider going down. Had not really thought about that one. Lord Jake, 1,148 listings. So that's a much better hit rate than I'm experiencing over there. If there are any Mercari sellers in the house who are really going great guns over there, let us know in the chat. What is it you're selling? Is there anything particular you're doing in terms of like promotions or marketing that you think is helping your sales? Because a lot of us obviously seem to be struggling with that platform. And again, it would be fantastic for all of us and obviously for Mercari if we all did a little bit better over there. Cookbooks is a category on Posh. Okay. Can you do just regular books or is it very specific types of books? Cookbooks actually makes good sense. And I got a bunch of those too. Mary McQueen, gosh, look at that. 12 sales on Mercari. Suddenly that sounds like a lot. I was just going to say, man, that's a big number. What kind of average selling price, if you don't mind me asking? Are you selling like decent dollar amount stuff? My experience again on Mercari, in most weeks, if you watch the main show on Mondays, it's a very rare occasion, maybe once, maybe twice a month, you'll see something in the What Sold recap that sold for $20 or more on Mercari. My average selling price over there is probably $10-12. It all seems to be kind of the lower value stuff, not anywhere on Etsy. I consistently will have multiple things that I will show in the What Sold that sold for pretty good money over on Etsy. So it's weird how different those marketplaces are. Jim Lucas, anybody else sourcing on Whatnot? That's a topic that we discussed a little bit previously. Let us know in the chat. Are you sourcing on Whatnot? I am not personally. I know Hank's Space he commented last week. He is trying to source some over on Whatnot. There are a ton of sellers, myself included, that are selling a lot of really low entry price, $1 starts, $2 starts type stuff, that if you bought multiple items and could get the reduced shipping on those subsequent items, you could probably make that make sense. There are some sellers who are selling some fairly high dollar items at fairly low starts. So if you got in there and happen to be in a show that's not like super busy and are the only person that might be interested in something, you might be able to kind of steal some stuff that's pretty good value over there. So let us know in the chat if you are sourcing on Whatnot and how that is working for you. Christy says, I've had no luck with toys and collectibles on Poshmark. That is interesting. And again, a lot of that, like for me, goes back to the marketing of the site. Like Poshmark, when you say Poshmark to most people, if they know anything about it at all, the thing that comes to mind is fashion and fashion accessories, not books, not electronics, not toys. And I understand their desire to expand their marketplace, but I wonder if that ultimately works once you've, not to say they've pigeonholed themselves, but once you've established your reputation as a go-to site for a particular type of item, I think it becomes really difficult to attract buyers and or sellers, and those things obviously go in hand. If there's no buyers, sellers are not interested. If there's no sellers, buyers aren't interested. So I think that's going to be a really interesting thing to watch, to see if Poshmark can grow their business by doing different categories, or if they need to find some way to double down on what they're already really good at, which is fashion and fashion accessories. Miss Lachey says, I promote my listings on Mercari every 30 days to keep listings from being buried. There you go. That's a good strategy. What kind of experience did you have? I saw a lot of sellers talking about problems with promotions and offers after the fee switch took place that they were not able to promote or send offers on Mercari. Has that been resolved that you've seen? I don't often do send out offers on Mercari. So let me know. Did you experience that when the fee changed, and has that resolved itself? Mel Flips It says, sold a mass market paperback Native American herbs and vintage kids books, and of course the vintage display books on Posh. So that's a wide range of stuff as well. Kaylee Debs says, I list other books on Poshmark, but finding a category for them is difficult. The sites that don't specialize in books, Etsy is one. Mercari, frankly, is another. They don't, in nonfiction, they don't, excuse me, they don't have a section for history books, which seems like it would be a no-brainer. There is no section for that. Etsy is very similar. There are a lot of things that you end up having to put in like reference books because there's no other category that's a good fit. So very weird. All right, Jim Lucas, low starts and reduced shipping helps. And you have to be picky, right? You'd have to know what you're looking for and to have some faith that the, excuse me, that the seller, gosh, I'm all choked up, is accurately representing the item. So what happens if the host of the show drops dead right in the middle? Mary McQueen, my ASP for those sales is $15. So that's kind of in range with what I'm seeing over there as well. Mel Flips It, sold a vintage $90 game on Posh, but again, my cross-lister does it, not my main platform. Cameron D, only cross-list non-apparel on Poshmark to poke their algorithm. And again, that's not a bad idea. Again, like we talk about, any activity, whether it's listing, sending offers, changing prices, delist, relist, any kind of activity that triggers the site to kind of boost you in search and boost the algorithm is probably of benefit, even if it doesn't help that specific individual item. So choked up, I got tears running down my face. This is awful. Miss Lachey says, I didn't have that problem with offers and promotions on Mercari. Very good. Yeah, I saw a lot of sellers saying they could not send offers. Call 911, says Carol. Absolutely. I wonder if they can find me down here in my basement in the Bat Cave. Mel Flips It, look for low starts and free shipping to source on Whatnot. There are some sellers that do free or reduced shipping. They'll do like a maximum of like $8 or $9 in shipping, which can make that make sense. Shipping to me on Whatnot is problematic. They use their own kind of rate tables that are not necessarily aligned with what the USPS charges are. It's unclear in books whether you're going to pay media rate or ground advantage. When you make a purchase, I don't know that it delineates that. And I think in a lot of times they are charging the higher rate and then providing the seller with the label at the lower rate and pocketing the difference. Not saying anything about the ethics of that, but it's just an observation. I see stuff coming in as a media seller kind of at mixed rates. Some stuff goes ground advantage, and I don't know what they've charged, how they've based the shipping. Also, their tiers are very funny. They're not incremented in ounce or pound increments. It's 1 to 2 pounds, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, and then it goes like 5 to 7 or something. And again, if you've got something that falls in the middle and somebody does combined shipping, it doesn't take long for that to end up being multiple extra pounds of weight that you're paying for. So none of these sites are perfect, but that one is that one's problematic for me as a buyer. Mary McQueen says, I've sold the most random things on Posh that I thought for sure they would sell on Mercari first. Not a clothing reseller, so hopefully people are realizing you can buy almost anything there. They probably need to do a better job of marketing that because, again, like I said, I think most people top of mind, Poshmark is fashion, clothing, accessories. I know they have tried to add things over time, but I don't know how many people are really aware. Like I just said, I didn't know you could sell books over there. So Carol C says that's a very neat and clean bat cave. We're in the YouTube studio piece of it, the actual bat cave. We're not over there because it is an absolute mess. I did a whatnot show yesterday. I had 70 books. I only sold 19 of the 70, so the other 51 books are currently in boxes in my listing area in a big pile waiting for me to figure out what I'm going to do with them. So that's why we're over here today. Because a lot of times on Wednesday, I will do it from actually my listing station, and I'll just do listings and we'll just have conversation while I'm working on some stuff, but it's a mess over there. Kapow Eagle says found lots of books, vinyl, and train items on Poshmark. Didn't know that before. What is shipping like on Poshmark? If you're a seller over there, let us know how the shipping works. I know they have their own labels as well. If I recall correctly, they can be a little funky on the shipping. Mary McQueen says shipping is so easy. They send you a first rate label for anything up to £5. You just need to upgrade the label above that. There you go. I assume they're doing, do they do priority or do they do ground advantage up to £5? And who pays if it ends up being over £5? How do they handle payment? Is a customer charged in advance for that, or what? If you could explain that a little bit more in the chat for those of us who don't sell over there. Kelly Debs, I just checked my sales history on Posh, and all kinds of blank books, craft books, and cookbooks have sold for me. There you go. And again, that probably makes more sense than like science fiction, for instance. If I'm a crafty person, Etsy would probably be my first choice, but Poshmark wouldn't be too far off the beaten path to look for that sort of thing. And especially if I'm over there shopping for something else and I think, I wonder if anybody's got, a scrapbook or whatever, and you just do a search and boom, there's some stuff. Kapow Eagle says thanks to Mary. And Mary says, you're very welcome. And again, if you could flesh that out a little bit more on the shipping for those of us who might be interested in considering Poshmark to add some stuff, that would be great. Okay, here we go. See, ask and ye shall receive. They do priority. The seller pays the upgrade if it's over £5. If you sell in the electronics category, they send you a ground advantage label. So there you go. See, that's where books could get kind of dicey. Because it doesn't take too many hardcover books to get over £5, and priority is going to be really, really expensive. Do they offer media mail at all as a buyer or a seller on Poshmark? I don't think they do, but again, I don't sell over there. Black Cat Flip says, don't ever go over the £5 limit on Posh. The upcharge for a heavier box is robbery. So there you go. How do they handle like combined purchases? Now I get, again, with clothing, you could buy 2 or 3 shirts or dresses or whatever and not get over £5. But if you're doing books, for instance, like I said, 2 or 3 hardcover books, depending on what they are, could very quickly get to be more than £5. Black Cat Flip says it's all priority. So yeah, again, as in fashion, as a buyer, would I mind paying priority rate to get an item within a couple of days or whatever? I say that within a week. Let's just be real. Nobody's delivering anything in 2 days anymore. We just talked about that on the main show, I think. eBay thinking about getting into the shipping business and talking about like promising 1 to 3 day delivery in the UK. Get out of here. I'm a bit of a cynic on that program. We are rapidly approaching the 1 hour mark, which is where I usually like to cut this off. But if anybody has anything else they would like to discuss today, thank you again for everybody that came out and for all your participation. I know I say it every week, but I genuinely mean it. I appreciate the fact that you are all like answering each other's questions in the chat before I can even get to them in the chat, and helping each other out. And the little community that we've managed to develop here is super, super meaningful to me. And I really appreciate Those of you who are here every single Wednesday, those of you who are new, hopefully you got something out of this in here. See, I remembered this time. Nobody had to shame me into it. Yeah, somebody just posted it. Hit that thumbs up button. Absolutely. If you got something out of today's show, and if you're not a subscriber to the channel, I'm generally trying to do 2 shows a week. Every Monday at 5 a.m., there will be a full podcast comes out anywhere you listen to podcasts, and of course here on YouTube, which covers all the reselling news from the previous week, along with some things that I've sold and any other things that I might want to cover. So if that's something you would be interested in, please feel free to subscribe. And then Wednesdays, we kind of just do this reselling chat. We talk about whatever the current hot topic might be. This week it was taxes and eBay glitches, but we'll talk about just about anything. So again, if you got something, please do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button. It says Kapow Eagle, as well as Opera Annie and Black Cat Flips. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Missed that one. Happy I discovered this podcast. It's a great community chat. Cameron, thank you very much. That has been part of the goal of this, is to present something a little bit different than what a lot of sellers are doing, and to kind of foster participation and involvement, rather than just me talking into my camera all the time. Kaylee Debs says, thank you. Have a great week. Everybody do the same. I hope everybody stays warm and safe. We got weather everywhere causing people problems, so definitely try to stay safe. Mary McQueen, have a happy Wednesday and the rest of your week as well. Jim Lucas says, the seller I bought from on Whatnot does max shipping of $8.87 and uses large priority boxes. There you go. I've seen a lot of sellers doing that. I've not looked into that, and I don't know how that gets subsidized, or if the seller ends up paying for any overage. Like, for instance, yesterday on my Whatnot show, I had one buyer that bought 8 big coffee table books, for, I think 6 of the 8 went for $1, and the other 2 went for maybe $2 and $3. So the total sale was less than $12, but it was like 22 pounds worth of books. If I had done $8.87 customer paid shipping on that, I would have lost my shirt on that deal. So there's a fine line there to make that work as a seller. If you pay the difference between that $8.87 and whatever the 20 odd pounds of books would be, that could get super expensive, especially if everything sells for $1. Which was the case for me mostly yesterday. Christy, thanks for a great show. Thank you. Thanks for coming out. I appreciate it. Miss Lachey, the thumbs up. Jim Lucas, probably make up for it in volume. Yeah, like I said, on that particular sale, like yesterday, 70 books and I only sold 19. My grand total gross was $30 on those 19 books. They're books that would have gotten donated probably anyway, so it's $30 I didn't have before. But after you deduct the fees and the cost of goods sold, there's not a lot of meat left on the bone there to pay for shipping overcharges if one person buys a whole bunch. So I don't know where the mix is. I haven't found it yet, clearly, of items that people will be willing to pay more than $1 for, or $2, depending on what it is. I know there are some sellers that just doing great business over there. Max Common Ground Finds, who pops in here from time to time, he posted on Facebook. He had a couple of sales last weekend on Whatnot. One sale he did $950 some on 54 transactions. Another one was 30 odd sales for well over $400. So he obviously has found the secret. He has thousands of books available to him. I think his inventory typically has been a little better than what mine is, what I've taken at least to Whatnot. But clearly there are sellers over there that are doing super, super well. Christy says, Whatnot has a deal with USPS for priority boxes, so whatever you can fit in any priority box, you can ship for $8.87. There you go. Again, though, with books, I don't know how big that, I don't have any large flat rate priority boxes here, but I don't know how many books you could get into a large box like that. That's why you see it as max shipping amount. That makes sense. Thank you for the tip. I appreciate that. I'll have to look into some large flat rate boxes from the post office. I believe they still offer those for free on their website, so I'll have to go check that out. An update for anybody that's interested in the saga of all the missing packages that I had from December 31st. As of yesterday, everything has finally been delivered. I'm still waiting to see if I get any neutral or negative feedback for how long those packages took. That is 22 days from shipping to receipt on a lot of them. Some of them that only went 20 odd miles. So that was not great. So we'll see how that goes, and I'll update you next week. Until then, my friends, thank you so much again for coming out, spending a little bit of your Wednesday. I hope everybody stays warm and safe, and we will see you next time.